Only 1 in 10 people struggling with an eating disorder will actually receive treatment for their eating disorder. It's incredibly frustrating and sad that someone who's actually ready for treatment, which is a whole other part of this subject, someone who's ready for treatment can't get the care that they desperately need.
I went to bed every night saying, I hope Lily survives her physical symptoms, and I hope she doesn't take her own life. I hope we can make it to the morning.
I think the general population doesn't really understand how important it is to have this care available to patients, because eating disorders are a life and death situation.
There are so many barriers to getting care. What I'm most concerned about right now are the financial barriers for people. They can't get outpatient care, they can't get higher level of care, and this can be because they have insurance, but folks aren't taking insurance because the reimbursement rates are so low. This can be for folks who don't have insurance, obviously, and folks who have Medicaid. There are just there's so few options out there for people to get treatment.
When it comes to accessing eating disorder treatment, there are tremendous barriers to getting into treatment and to staying in treatment, in particular around insurance and finances. Eating disorder treatment can be costly, and finding ways to cover that expense can seem impossible for folks. And those barriers are always going to be higher for folks with multiply marginalized identities. And so CRC's work is a crucial backstop so that folks can get the care that they need, so that they can get better, and so that they can live and thrive.
Someone's got to be doing the work, whether it's advocacy, whether it's medical training, because otherwise people die.
We're offering services that could and probably should be available through our health system, but it's not.
When a family gets a diagnosis, their loved one has an eating disorder, they receive that diagnosis, they might not know where to turn. And so they can turn to Carolina Resource Center for Eating Disorders. They can call CRC for ED's free helpline and talk with someone who can really explain what eating disorder treatment looks like. They can provide referrals, and they can talk a family member through what the process is to get started in treatment.
We have our free support group. We always are involved in advocacy, because outreach and advocacy is where it's at, because unless people understand how severe eating disorders are, how prevalent they are, and how insidious they are, they're not going to really understand how much our programming is needed. Under our programming, we do education in the community. We do education for healthcare providers. We also have our medical provider resource that we just released a year ago, which is a phenomenal tool for not just healthcare providers, but also for families, for clinicians of any sort, any type of support service, to really just learn a little bit about the language to use. What are the labs that we need? What does a treatment team look like? What are the levels of care? Basic information about how to approach eating disorders that wasn't really out there before we produced it.
CRC for ED provides training and education to other healthcare professionals, because oftentimes eating disorders are not a part of the curriculum when people are trained to be physicians, registered dietitians, or psychotherapists. And so CRC for ED is filling that gap of teaching healthcare professionals about how to recognize eating disorders, how to diagnose eating disorders, and how to treat eating disorders.
When I started receiving helpline phone calls from healthcare providers, not just individuals and families, and I started receiving calls from doctors telling me that they didn't understand a whole lot about eating disorders, I was shocked to find out that most medical providers get 30 minutes of training on eating disorders. That's not adequate.
As I transition from my own eating disorder to speaking and writing and researching these issues, I've heard countless stories like mine, and that speaks to how critical it is that healthcare providers become educated about eating disorders, so that even though they're well-intentioned, they're not doing irreparable harm.
Balancing physical and mental health care is very delicate, and as more healthcare providers become eating disorder informed, we can more carefully navigate this delicate space and not cause additional harm.
Patients and providers have really benefited benefited from the relationship with the CRC for ED because of all of the teaching that has gone on and upskilling of providers and making folks aware of the gaps in care, and then also how can we change how we interact with patients and their families to help them find services, to help them understand what's going on, and to make sure that we're not doing any damage by the language that we choose.
It has been so phenomenal to have CRC partner with MAHEC and have that ability to change providers' perspective on folks' relationships to food and their bodies. CRC has allowed the providers here at MAHEC to just get more training and knowledge about what eating disorders look like, what disordered eating looks like in the patients that we serve in our population.
CRC for ED has an annual conference. For years, we focused on training clinicians, therapists, and dietitians who are already in the field of eating disorders or who are entering the field of eating disorders. And the past couple of years, we've expanded to educating healthcare providers. So we're partnering with MAHEC now to be able to have that reach to train doctors on eating disorders. And it's really exciting to have that field open up to us and get in front of the doctors who are so crucial to helping folks recover.
The HEAL conference provided an opportunity to be in a room with 150, 200 colleagues, and it was really confirmation that the training and the work I'm doing personally was felt by others. The HEAL conference was very exciting, and it was wonderful to meet colleagues that are local and from other parts of the country. But those communications and connections that I made at the HEAL conference continue to this day.
The HEAL conference is a wonderful way for providers to come together in this open and curious place and collaborative place to challenge the status quo. And again, the status quo right now is so shaming and dehumanizing. So we have to get to a different place. And the HEAL conference helps providers have a path to something better.
Collaboration is essential, and especially between organizations like ours, because no single entity can address this crisis alone. We know that a very small fraction of people with eating disorders actually get the care that they need, and so we need to work together to leverage each other's strengths, whether that's raising awareness or advocating for policy change or providing direct support, because when all of us work together, we know that we can amplify our voices and we can expand our reach, and we can create a more unified and ultimately a more powerful statement and a movement.
I think it's important for people to understand just the weight that nonprofits carry, and especially in systems that aren't really working, and how unfortunate that is. While we're so proud of the work that we do, and we do a lot, we shouldn't have to. We shouldn't have to be the life-saving care for individuals who need help.
If nonprofits are the only ones that are serving as safety nets, we're the only ones who are then able to make sure that these families don't fall through the cracks, because without us, we would see even greater inequity than we do today and more lives lost.
So it is really just, it's tough. It's tough.
Even people who have resources, who can afford treatment, it's still very difficult to know where to go, to know how to begin to get treatment for an eating disorder.
I want people to understand that, again, we're not just providing services, we are addressing an often silenced mental health crisis that impacts millions of people. And those millions of people include our kids, and they include our siblings, and they include the people that we grew up with. And we cannot do this work alone. So we need policy change to ensure access to care. We need sustainable funding to expand our reach, and we ultimately need community support to drive this mission forward. Eating disorders have historically been an underfunded and under-recognized field despite the devastating impact of these illnesses. And so I believe that collectively we can help change that narrative and create a system where no one has to fight or choose between whether they're going to have access to food or access to care or access to transportation or access to care. and they'll be able to live.
Many people dealing with eating disorders will not have adequate access to care, and many others will have no access at all. It's so important to support organizations like CRC to make sure that there's a backstop so that these folks can access services and care and support in what can be a life-saving way.
CRC is so important because it provides that beautiful space for people to be in the bodies that they have and feel safe, which doesn't happen in so many medical facilities. And CRC can't continue this work without financial funding.
Advocacy and education CRC provides requires funding so that this important work can continue. Marginalized populations deserve the same health care as those with commercial insurance, for example, and CRC fills the gap so that all patients can receive the care from trained professionals.
So as a board member of CRC for ED, I know firsthand how important it is that we continue to raise money so that CRC can continue. We have a small staff who works very hard. We have a small board who also works very hard, but the funding is important for us to continue. We continue to apply for grants. Unfortunately, at this point, eating disorders is not often an identified need for grant funding. I think there's still a lot of stereotypes about who gets eating disorders, but what we know is that eating disorders affect all people regardless of who they are, and that the need is there for treatment, and that's why CRC for ED exists, but we need continued funding so that those services continue.
Personally, I feel like this relationship that I've developed with the CRC for ED has been integral into my development as a provider and taking care of the disordered eating population. I am so much better, and I'll admit that. I think that my success rate in helping people navigate the system and then also finding a path to recovery has increased exponentially, and I am so appreciative for this relationship.
The resources available to try to help navigate any kind of healing process are very limited. Would I encourage people to give money to CRC to help their mission? Absolutely. Would I suggest families in crisis reach out to CRC for support and guidance? Without a doubt.
As a nonprofit, we rely on our friends and our families and private donors to help us do the work that we do. We can't do it without people donating.
With all of our outreach that we do, I still don't think people fully understand what's going on and the lives that we're losing to this disease. We spend so much time trying to educate people so that there is an awareness, not just so that we can get on the front end of the disease or help people recover from the disease, but so that we can raise some more money because people understand how vital our programming is and really all of the work that we're doing to help keep people alive.
Mental illness is misunderstood, especially in eating disorders. One of the things we try to do is educate our community so that people understand eating disorders and are more willing, therefore, to give.
In an ideal world, eating disorder activists and organizations that provide backstops wouldn't be necessary. Healthcare providers would be well educated, treatment would be accessible, and people who have eating disorders would be supported and treated and helped to live and thrive. And I'm proud of the steps that the eating disorder world has taken, and I look forward to a world where those steps are finished and this work is no longer necessary.
There are a lot of people who we have supported through the system who have reached out afterwards when they've been through their recovery journey. And while we know that recovery is not linear and that relapse, not only is it possible, but it's probable with eating disorders, I have to tell you what it feels like when I hear back from somebody who's actually used our services and landed somewhere safely and they've gotten the care that they need. And that, to know that we've actually helped that person, it makes it all worthwhile.
I didn't want other parents to have to experience this, so that's where we started gathering around the table. It's It makes me extremely proud today to know that no other parent has to go through what we went through in providing help and recovery for our daughter. What we do matters, and it makes a difference, and that touches my heart. My mantra has always been, we can't save the world, but if we can touch one person today, then we've done a good job.